It's time for the Rick Smith Show. Now, here is the voice of the working class, Rick Smith. Welcome back to the Rick Smith Show. Now, here is Rick Smith.
So got an email from Jennifer who agrees 100% with my assessment that Trump's parents were terrible. That he's permanently stunted, she writes, as a 2-year-old throwing a temper tantrum in the cereal aisle. I have said that before numerous times, but we're stuck with this. And I think Bill Barr is right. We shouldn't have to deal with his therapy sessions. It's time to move it along. And I'm still hoping. I know I said no jail time. Part of me still hopes for that. Anyway, here to share some thoughts on the latest defense of mine. I've asked our good friend Craig Harrington to come talk with us. Craig is the research director over at Media Matters, MediaMatters.org, the website. Craig, thanks for taking time for us.
Thank you for the visualization of Donald Trump as one of those seagulls from Finding Nemo. It really does put it all together. That is exactly the case we're dealing with his retention and mishandling of classified documents. We could just stop right now.
Yeah. So will that defense hold up even in front of a Trump-appointed judge? It's all mine. It was in boxes and with my name on them. So clearly mine, right? It's mine, Craig.
Yeah, I mean, that remains to be seen how well it holds up. Your reference there, of course, is to the judge in this case, is a Trump appointee, Eileen Cannon, who, when Trump appointed her, she faced some degree of pushback and blowback from the legal community, which did not think that she met the qualification standards to be, a lifetime appointed federal judge. She's handed the Trump team a couple of wins previously, but I'm not a lawyer, but I've been following this case very closely, and I've seen the legal expertise that's been available in public media, and of course talked to a handful of legal experts myself about this. And it does seem that the way this indictment was framed, particularly with damning evidence from Trump, in his own words, in recordings that were produced as part of the investigation, it does seem like he knew that the documents he kept were not his. But that doesn't mean that that the case might not run into some hurdles, some of them which may or may not be placed there by the judge overseeing the proceedings, which, as we just said, is a Trump appointee who has handed him wins in this case in recent months.
No, I mean, I'm there's so much to this that I think, is important to point out. A big part of it, and I talked about this at the beginning, the fact that the FBI and the DOJ waited so long, that they did so many, mental gymnastics, procedural gymnastics. They did cartwheels and somersaults and you name it. They wore kid gloves. They did all this stuff to try and get him to go, please comply. Please do what the right thing is. Please do what everybody else has done when this happened. Please give us our stuff back. And it took him a year to finally decide to do something about it. I mean, that is mind-blowing to me on how somebody can have that kind of ability to avoid consequence and then still come out and say, no, you're treating me unfairly.
Yeah, and it's not just Trump who's making this claim that he is being treated unfairly. The right-wing media echo chamber and the media and political ecosystem that Trump now controls, but which also mutually supports him. They reacted with kind of very predictable outrage when this 37-count federal criminal indictment was unsealed and displayed to the public, in the past few days. This case involves the mishandling of government records that did not belong to Donald Trump, and it also involves the mishandling of classified materials, which did not belong to Trump. And specifically, what we've seen is a number of arguments that, first of all, it's a claim from his media, from sort of media sycophants, as well as from himself, that he owned these documents, that they were his because he was the president and they were produced during his administration or delivered to him while he was in office. There's very clear black letter law that these documents were not his, but that is going to be his claim. That's going to be his legal argument. And that is certainly the publicity argument that they're making. Then there's another argument that he's started to pick up that really was manufactured by right-wing media, by some of the sort of very serious conservative intellectuals in the right-wing media space, that this prosecution on the Espionage Act in particular is inappropriate because Donald Trump isn't a spy and hasn't committed espionage, and the indictment doesn't accuse him of actual like spy crimes. And so him being charged with this act is somehow inappropriate. But that's also black letter law in the Espionage Act. We've seen lots of people who have been charged using the Espionage Act for simple mishandling or misappropriation or theft of government records or classified materials, the dissemination of them, the storage of them improperly. And in fact, the day that Trump was arraigned in Florida, a U.S. airman, not Jack Teixeira, who was an Air National Guard's member of the Air National Guard out of Massachusetts, another U.S. airman was actually sentenced to prison, I believe, for 3 years, with some time served on there. But a final term, a prison sentence of 3 years for the mishandling of classified materials. And then in the case of this U.S. airman, they actually were not intentionally trying to misuse them. This person was actually taking work home to try to like get through the backlog of documents and materials. But you're not allowed to do that. You're not allowed to take classified materials out of appropriate containers or appropriate facilities. It's a crime to move them inappropriately. And this person went to prison. They were remanded immediately into federal custody when they were arraigned. Donald Trump wasn't remanded into custody when he was arraigned. Donald Trump got to go to Bedminster, New Jersey, and host a fundraiser. So the idea that he's being treated inappropriately, the idea that there's a second tier, a two-tiered system of justice that is sort of out to get Donald Trump, it's actually quite the opposite. There may be a two-tiered system of justice here,
not maybe,
but it's benefiting Donald Trump. Other people who faced much lesser crimes. I mean, we're talking about hundreds of documents, hundreds of classified materials. If he were an airman, if he were a guardsman, he would have been in prison for the past 2 years as the investigation proceeded, not living a millionaire's life down at his private estate in Florida.
Well, as the email I just got said, reality winner got 4 years for one document.
Yeah, that is a perfect example. And the odd thing here is that some of the people who were responsible in that reality winner case, in particular Glenn Greenwald, who's become one of these like Trump who I do not support types of people, he has been just on a warpath about how this prosecution and investigation of Trump is inappropriate. And Glenn Greenwald's publication was actually responsible for, because of its own sort of lax operational security, they actually outed Reality Winner as the source of that classified document that they published when The Intercept published that. He has been on a warpath against this prosecution that Donald Trump faces. But Reality Winner went to jail for literally hundreds of times lesser of a crime. So the idea that Trump is somehow being, singled out or treated unfairly, it just doesn't stand up to basic muster. Of course, that's plenty for right-wing media, but I think for most people, they don't think that this has been a prosecution that's been inappropriate. And you can actually see that in polling.
No, you do. You listen to the Rick Smith Show here with Craig Harrington. Craig is the research director over at Media Matters, MediaMatters.org, the website. We'll get links out on social media, how you can take a look at the work that they do. Now, Mary sent me an email here during the break, because you had said that, on the Espionage Act, that they're not claiming that he's a spy. She simply asks, how do we know?
Yeah, that's an interesting argument, because, people have said the indictment doesn't accuse him of committing acts of espionage, like the traditional James Bond types of spying. That the indictment doesn't accuse him of directly handing documents to foreign nationals or to hostile foreign agents or collaborating with a foreign government. But we actually don't know that. We just don't know. The case, the trial hasn't begun. So it's entirely possible that if we went to trial, we'd learn more through the discovery phase or through the open trial process. The indictment doesn't accuse him of being a spy or of handing over government classified secrets in exchange for cash. They don't accuse him of being engaged in a bribery scheme or anything of that nature that you might traditionally consider to be espionage. But that doesn't mean it didn't happen. We just literally don't know, and we won't know until there's a trial or there's some sort of plea agreement that comes out of this pretrial process. We literally just don't know.
Yeah, I said from the beginning, I don't think that that's part of it. I think this was purely about a child wanting a shiny thing to be able to show his friends. But again, that's my view of who he is. So he likes to play the big shot. Look, I got classified documents laying all over my bathroom. Look how important I am. That's always been my view of him.
And that certainly seems to be backed up by some of the conversations from Trump himself that we see in the documents. He's a very braggadocious person, and you can read in some of the quotations that they have of him. This is live audio that they have that was uncovered by the investigators. He's kind of just bragging. He's waving things around. He's showing them off. And this again just goes to the idea that he's facing some kind of political persecution for committing these sort of haphazard mistakes and these like simple miserly crimes. It's somewhat absurd to think that there's a political motivation to the DOJ going after him. Like, he was just flaunting regulations. He was just openly violating the law for whatever reasons.
If you remember at the beginning of his presidency, there were stories about classified documents being, just left around in a ballroom in Mar-a-Lago with, I think it was the Japanese who were, or it was either the Japanese or Chinese dignitaries they had come in. But there was reports that they had classified material just kind of laying around, where you go, why would you do that other than it's just, hey, look how important I am?
Yeah, this was actually one of the very first sort of Trump White House scandals. I'm not sure exactly of the timing, but it was Donald Trump and then Japanese Prime Minister, who's since been assassinated, Shinzo Abe. And they were having an open conversation. I believe this conversation was with regard to cruise missile strikes against Syrian air bases. And they were just having an open conversation at the dinner table in Mar-a-Lago, surrounded by hundreds of guests. There are photographs that are still on Twitter of documents and sensitive materials just strewn about, and an open conversation that Trump was having with another world leader in full view and within earshot of the public. And those sorts of stories came out of Mar-a-Lago over and over and over again. And nothing from those 4 years are included in this investigation. It's entirely based upon what he did after he stopped being president, when what he did was effectively stealing documents that did not belong to him, mishandling them and misappropriating them and misusing them, storing them in an unsecure facility, and then obstructing the investigation into recovering them and lying to investigators and refusing to give them back. He also roped multiple people into this criminal conspiracy, including multiple lawyers who signed legal documents lying to the government. And essentially, he forced them to commit crimes on his own behalf by lying to his legal team. And all of those lawyers have since resigned. This isn't a political persecution. This is a person who was extremely careless and haphazard, and almost intentionally so. And the government just pleaded with him for over a year to play ball and return the documents the way everyone else had. Yeah. And what he refused, and he just simply refused to do it until their hands were tied. And this is also, this is not the only litigation. This is not the only criminal or civil litigation that Trump faces. His legal exposure after leaving the presidency, it's truly remarkable, the amount of protection the presidency provided him. He has other criminal investigations in New York City, in New York State, in Fulton County, Georgia, and there's an other federal investigation into his involvement in the January 6th insurrection. All of those cases are completely independent of one another, and they're all proceeding right now because for the 4 years that he was in the office of the presidency, he was shielded from investigation and from prosecution, and now he's not the president, so all of these cases were able to continue, and that doesn't even continue the civil litigation that he lost for the defamation and sexual abuse against E. Jean Carroll. And she's actually bringing that case again because the day after he lost that case, he continued to publicly defame her on what was it, the May 10th CNN town hall that he did that was hosted by Caitlin Collins. All of this legal trouble is happening all at the same time, and he entirely brought it on himself. And there's no one else to blame. Right-wing media are sort of cobbling together to try to find excuses and deflect and talk about Hunter Biden and Bill Clinton's sock drawer, but just nothing stands up to muster. Like, this is just the simplest scrutiny will tell you that Trump brought all of this on himself. And the reason it's all snowballing right now before the election is because it takes a long time to build these cases. If he weren't running for president, all these cases would still exist,
right.
And they would still be proceeding on the same timelines.
So what do you say to the person who goes, this is just all a hit job. They're just going after him because they don't want him to run for president. Because there is that thought out there that all of this is they're just targeting poor Donald because they can't beat him again at the ballot box. You've heard that frame. What's the response to that when someone who's that close-minded? Because I listen to all this stuff and I go, why would we want someone so irresponsible in the White House? And then when does the Republican Party shed themselves of him and be done with him because of all the chaos?
Yeah, well, those are a couple of different questions. And so the first one, the argument that all of this is happening because he's running for president again. Well, so that's a counterfactual that we can't prove, right? He is running for president again, and there's no way to get around the fact we can't run, a real world experiment again. And so while the Jesse Waterses of Fox News and even the sort of very serious types at the National Review or some other conservative publications, they might be arguing that Trump is only facing the weight of these investigations because he's going to run for president again. And if he won, he'd potentially be shielded from investigation and from prosecution again. The idea that this is all being done because he's running for president is somewhat undermined by the fact that these investigations have been going on for a very long time, and he hasn't been actively running for president that entire time. He was informally a candidate. Everyone knew he was going to run again. He kept saying that he was going to run again, but he hadn't filed any of his paperwork until the paperwork was formally filed. And these investigations almost all predate his filing of his formal paperwork. So you'd have to say that the DOJ had a crystal ball or was making an educated guess, but that'd be a waste of their time. There's no reason for them to do that.
Going to be fun and entertaining over the next year plus to find out how this works itself out. And maybe we come to a collective moment of let's move on. Maybe, I don't know, but it is entertaining. Craig, I appreciate the time and the insight. Thanks so much.
Yeah, thank you.
Our good friend Craig Harrington. Make sure you check out the work that he does over at Media Matters, MediaMatters.org, the website. Going to take a quick break. Right back with your thoughts. Stick around and listen to The Rick Smith Show. We're working people. Come to talk.
Enough with the gay pride flags. How about this flag?
It's happy birthday, Grandpa. Happy. And I said, oh, great. I just got charged with, they want 400 years approximately.
The most innocent man that's ever been in the White House, Donald J. Trump. The best president we've ever had.
You could take the Dalai Lama and make him the Republican nominee that tried to destroy his life.
45/47. He's coming back. This is the longest witch hunt going on 8 years now since he came down the escalator. The guy's an American hero.
MSNBC with their low IQ audience.
And I'm starting to ask the question, was this ketchup bottle woke? Is this mustard? I mean, literally.
Do you believe there's a two-tier system of justice? Do you believe this is unfair?
Obviously. I don't even know how anybody can ask that with a straight face. There's obviously a two-tier justice system.
And you have them trying to protect Joe Biden, who has, I believe, committed multiple criminal acts.
If Trump were to get reelected, should he consider a pardon for the Biden family?
Absolutely not. They're a crime family.
Joe Biden should be impeached. He should be removed from office. He should be prosecuted, and he should go to prison.
You're either an American or a Democrat these days. There's no way to be both.
So as you can see here, strong sentiments out here.
The media will not cover this story, even though these are the most serious allegations ever leveled against the president.
I introduced these articles of impeachment not for personal gain or even political popularity. I introduced articles of impeachment on behalf of the American people.
The conspiracy theorists are looking pretty good right about now. Remember when we were made fun of for doing our own research?
No American died or fought for the pride flag.
Food for everyone. Food for everyone.
The next Republican president is going to be under tremendous pressure to bring charges and indict Joe Biden, his family, his crackhead son, whoever.
The Dodgers have decided to declare war on Christianity. Forget the Dodgers.
This is a communist country. We've been taken over. It's not the America that we all thought that we had. We're not a free country anymore.
There's a lot. Love your hat. Thank you.
So again, Pennsylvania passed the Pennsylvania House passed the minimum wage increase, 103 to 100. The Pennsylvania House is broken down with 102 Democrats, 101 Republicans. That means a couple of Republicans went over and voted for it. How amazing! Only I think three. I think three voted for it, and I think one Democrat voted against it. Which you go, how do you do that? But again, they're going to raise the minimum wage over the next couple of years from the current state law of $7.15, federal law $7.25, up to $15 an hour by 2026. I'm going to do that in steps. The tip minimum wage is going to go up to 60% of the minimum wage, which currently is $2.83 an hour. That's the minimum wage in this state for tipped workers. Now, what's interesting is Republicans were, well, we can't possibly vote for this. And this woman, Katie Klunk, she's a York County, Pennsylvania Republican. She says, I cannot support a bill that would put a local family restaurant out of business, and along with it, the many employees who make a living at their 3 locations. And I'm going, hold on a second. I don't know about you, but $2.83 an hour, I don't know. I don't know what you buy with that. You can't even buy a Happy Meal with that. $7.25, the minimum after the tips. You can't make a living on that either. I'm confused at where your values are in this. Now understand what they're saying. That it's more important for these handful of business owners to be able to make profit than it is for working people to put food on their kids' table. That's what they're saying. They're saying that we've chosen sides in this. Not that hey, we want to make sure that everyone's able to survive and make ends meet. No. It's all about, we got to have these small business owners who, give me a break. $15 an hour over. Now remember, this is with tips and all of that. If you're not making that, there's a problem. Minimum wage right now, $290 a week. Who can survive on that? You're talking $15,000 a year. Who can survive on that? Now, according to the Employment Policy Institute, because as soon as Pennsylvania passed this, immediately they sent out their numbers, said it's going to cost Pennsylvania almost 86,000 jobs by 2026. Half of them are going to be at bars and restaurants. They're going to lose that. It's going to cost almost 32,000 tipped workers their jobs. 1 out of 4 workers are going to lose their job in the restaurant industry. And you go, hold on a second. So what you're saying is there are that many people who make below the minimum wage, make below that kind of wage to be able to start, that they're going to lose those jobs because they're not making that kind of income? Is that the kind of economy we want? Is that a positive thing? I'm telling you, at some point, we've got to demand better. Let's go to the phones. You got Barry on line 1. Barry, how are you?
Yeah, good. Good, Rick. Just to have a job ain't enough because slaves had jobs. So that's not just to have a job ain't enough. And the second point, Rick, was I saw a poll, approval rating. I thought Trump was 33 and Joe Biden was 31. I can't explain that. The third point was union members voted for Hillary 51%, and for Joe and 56%. So that's disgusting to me as a union member myself.
I agree.
So that's all I got, Rick.
I appreciate it, Barry. No, that's good stuff. No, I mean to go through it, simply, the fact that union members look to Republicans as a possible island is amazing to me. And it tells you how well unions have done for their members to make them think that they can be Republicans, to make them think that that they have their interest at heart, when the fact of the matter is Republicans have done everything they can possibly to destroy unions and destroy the ability for working people to make a living. It's just crazy. And Barry, I appreciate the call, man. Thanks so much. But this is one of those moments where working people have got to wake up. Now you go, but Rick, Joe Biden's numbers are down, and it's solely because you look at the power of the right-wing media. as my kid was telling me yesterday, all he sees on his social media feeds is all stuff attacking Biden, all stuff attacking Democrats. Democrats they don't even seem to be competing in this space. Right now, we should be talking about raising the minimum wage at every moment. The fact that you've got Republicans saying, sorry, 7.25, no, you don't deserve more than that. Every person who works for a living who makes less than $15 an hour should be marching in Pennsylvania, or a state that doesn't have a $15 an hour minimum wage, should be marching to the election office to get a voter registration to vote in the next election, to start throwing these bums out. But the reality is the moneyed interests know. They know if they throw out a little red meat, talk about, this bit of division, this bit of outrage candy, keep funding this right-wing media, keeps shoving this stuff down our throat, we're going to eat ourselves. And we're not going to fight on these important issues. 7.25. Our minimum wage is $7.25 an hour. That is disgraceful. In the wealthiest country in the history of civilization, at its wealthiest moment, that's what we're telling workers we think of them. That's disgraceful. Gonna take a quick break. Right back.
Hey, this is Ken Casey from the Dropkick Murphys, and you're listening to The Rick Smith Show.
We are AFGE. We support our nation's military and our nation's veterans. We protect our nation's borders and provide services to our nation's seniors. Across the country and here in Washington, D.C., the American Federation of Government Employees. We work for America.
Before we close the program, we want to take a moment to thank our viewers and to share a little bit about why we do what we do. At the Rick Smith Show, we believe that media today is almost entirely controlled by corporate greed. So we have now 24-hour news channels. But instead of 24 hours of news, what we get is 1 hour repeated 24 times, and with tons of commercials, creating obscene amounts of profits. Information once presented as a public service has now become a private commodity. So when lies make money, lies are what we get. We get a corporate-controlled rage machine feeding us anger and hate, trying to convince us that our problems are right-left or red-blue, when they are and always have been up-down, the wealthiest 1% versus the rest of us. Our goal is to be an alternative to that machine, not as a news show with a fancy journalist out front, but as a talk show run by a union truck driver and a team of working-class heroes just like you. Everything we do, both what we get right and what we get wrong, is dedicated to advancing the interests of America's working families. No corporate ad buys, no think tanks, no focus groups, no talking points. We are media by working people, for working people. Thanks for tuning in. We'll see you back here next time.